Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's coverage of primary elections 2026. My name is Nick Tatakis, and this program is part of a series of candidate forums hosted by Town Meeting TV in advance of the primary election on Tuesday, August 11th, 2026. These forums are made possible by Town Meeting TV's generous underwriting partners. You can find all our forums at cctv.org/primary or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel where auto-generated captions are available. And if you're tuning in on YouTube, click the subscribe button to stay tuned in to local democracy this election season. On tonight's program, we will hear from 3 candidates running for the Democratic primary seats for state representative in the Chittenden-18 district. Those candidates are Amy Bolosky-Branch, Ali Jang, and Carol Odie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
You're very welcome. We've prepared a list of questions for each of you, and you will have 90 seconds to answer each question. Rebuttals will only be allowed if a candidate is named directly, in which case the candidate will have 30 seconds to respond. And if you're tuning in live, we welcome your questions at 802-862-3966. And if you call in, we'll do our best to prioritize your question, though we will screen calls to ensure questions are not repeated. We'll ask that you share your name, the town you live in, and that your question be directed at all candidates, not just one candidate in particular. Without further ado, let's get started with 1-minute opening statements, and we'll start with incumbent Carol Odie. Carol, please tell us why you are running and what will be different for your constituents if you are elected.
Thank you. My name is Carol Odie, and I've served as one of your state representatives for 10 years, and I'm running for re-election. I've focused on making progress on your priorities, and after knocking on nearly 1,000 doors since May so far, I know they remain important. Lowering property taxes, cleaning up Lake Champlain, shifting responsibility for homelessness to the state-run program, making it easier to build affordable housing, and protecting our constitutional rights and democracy. I'll continue to listen to you and make progress on your goals moving forward.
Thank you, Carol. We'll turn to Ali Jang. 60 seconds for your opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. This is Ali Jang, a member of the New American Community, a former Burlington City Councilor who spent their 8 years, worked on the hardest issues of our lifetime. I am an active and great community member who is not entrenched in a lot of difficulties of partisan politics. What I want is for the state of Vermont to work for the people, Democrat, progressive, and independent. I am running as a Democrat because I also work on education. My professional life, I work for Building Bright Futures, work for the city of Burlington School District, and I would want to be a strong voice for the New North End on issues that are affecting you every single day.
Thank you, Ali. And we'll turn to Amy Bolosky-Branch for your opening statement.
Thank you for having us. We're living during extremely stressful times. Local concerns about healthcare, substance abuse, affordability, housing, transportation, our school systems, national concerns about our environment, ongoing war and violence in the Middle East, immoral actions taken by ICE against our migrant and immigrant neighbors, and attacks on the rights of women, people of color, and queer, transgender, and non-binary Americans, all of which are cause for loss of hope that we can't afford to lose. What I know is that Vermont is made up of some of the most amazing, smart, creative, kind, courageous, and hopeful human beings I've ever met in my life. And if I'm elected, I will dedicate myself to tapping into the brilliance of Vermonters so that we can solve the Vermont issues together and that we can join together to resist the oppression of this current federal administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And we'll get into our questions now. We've come up with a slate of them to ask, and we'll start with Ali for the first question on committee assignments. As you know, the legislature gets most of their work done in committees that focus on specific legislation. They take testimony and look to bring completed legislation to the full House or Senate floor. Ali, what committee do you think you would serve best and why? 90 seconds.
Yep. Given my background in local government, education, healthcare, and cost of living policies, the committee that I would align most with my representation would be human services. And after human services, healthcare, because right now I'm a board member at the Community Health Center of Burlington, understanding what are the issues affecting that field. I would also do very well in terms of government operation and military affairs, because this is what you see is the Vermont National Guard gave me this Medal of Accommodation for my participation in their mission, state health, global health, and also diversifying the Vermont National Guard. And lastly, I think the general and housing, I would bring great perspective on those as well.
Thank you, Ali. We'll turn to Amy for your answer. What committee do you think you would serve best and why?
The committee that I would hope to serve on is Human Services. I've spent the past 35 years as a licensed clinical mental health counselor working primarily with children and families, many of them involved in the child welfare system, so foster families, adoptive families, kinship caregivers, and most recently working with parents whose children are in foster care and then are coming home. So in that time, I've worked with a lot of systems, family systems, legal systems, school systems, and especially the DCF, Department of Children and Families system. So I feel like I know that system really well. I know that what systems need are people that are able to have courageous conversations about complex topics and to be able to simultaneously zoom in and look at the teeny tiny detail of an issue as well as zoom out and see the bigger picture. So I've had a lot of practice doing that over the past 3 decades and hope that I can do more.
Great, thank you, Amy. And finally, Carol, what committee do you think you would serve best and why?
Well, in the past, I served on the House Natural Resources Fish and Wildlife Committee, and knowing our community's need for a clean lake, I was able to advocate for a new funding source to clean up Lake Champlain, which we have still. Now on House Ways and Means, the Taxing Committee, where I hope to stay if reelected, because I learned so much when I served on the Burlington School Board for 10 years in the 90s, and also on the State Board of Education when Governor Howard Dean appointed me to that committee board. And I advocated during the formation of Act 60 for things that would help Burlington. And not all those things came into being when that act passed. So I was able to change the funding formula by changing the weights, and that took a lot of people, but that was my huge initiative, and that has lowered property taxes in Burlington by millions and millions of dollars. I also advocated for $3 million to renovate the interior of the Macy's for the high school students to study there while the new high school is being built, and advocated successfully for the $16.3 million to come to the city to dismantle and safely dispose of our PCB-laden high school. Just most recently, I protected us, Burlington, from an excess spending penalty, which we would have incurred for the debt that we're paying on the high school. And I could do that because I'm sitting right there in that committee and paying close attention to Burlington's needs, to our taxpayers' needs, to our schools' needs, and to our city's needs.
Thank you, Carol. We're now going to turn to a question on the budget and federal funding. We've brought that up briefly already on this panel. So, Amy, I'll turn to you for this question first. Vermont relies on federal funds for roughly 1/3 of its state budget. And with the federal government pulling back on spending across multiple programs, that foundation is shakier than it's been in years. Amy, how do you think Vermont should prepare for federal funding reductions? And when you have hard choices to make, what are your priorities?
Obviously, it's a very concerning issue. There are not easy answers to this at all. One thing that I reflect back on is when I was a new parent, we were raising our children together, and my partner and I made a decision that one of us would work full-time, the other would work part-time so that we could spend more time with our children. So our finances were tight, and so there were a lot of decisions to make on a daily basis. And when I think about the priorities, obviously food and shelter and medical care were at the top of the list. So I apply that same thing when I think of the state in terms of what we would have to prioritize. There are going to be a lot of tough decisions in this position, and when I think about that, I have these 4 grappling gates, I call them, things that I would filter any decision through. So one, How will it impact our children and our vulnerable community members? That's key. A second one would be, how does it impact the environment? Third one, is it just, equitable, and fair? And finally, can we afford it, both individually and collectively? So that's my hope.
Gateway, what did you call them?
Call them 4 grappling gates.
Grappling gates. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Carol, your response. How do you think Vermont should prepare for federal funding reductions? And when you have hard choices to make, what are your priorities?
Well, we have, for the 10 years I've been there, fully funded in our budget our responsibilities. So we fully fund our unemployment fund, our rainy day fund, and a 53-week fund that every certain number of years we have to build up a reserve so that our employees can be paid for an extra week that month, that year. And so continuing to balance the budget, those are hard choices right there. We have, priorities would be, one, feeding people. SNAP benefits have been cut by the federal government, and we need to look at being sure people are fed. And second, healthcare. With the loss of Obamacare subsidies to pay for health insurance premiums for so many people, they are falling off of their health insurance plans, and this impacts their health, and it impacts the health of our hospitals to be able to survive. So that's where I would put extra resources.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Ali Jing, your response. How do you think Vermont should prepare for federal funding reductions, and what are your priorities when you have to make hard decisions?
Yep. I think I completely agree about fiscal responsibility, and also the state of Vermont is doing a great job in that sense. But I think the question is very specific to how do we prepare. From my perspective, it would be good for us to identify which federal funds are most at risk in order for us to have a contingency plan about getting ready. 2, I think efficiency across government reduces duplication, strengthening partnership with local communities, with also local institutions, with local government would also help the state very well. And lastly, we cannot just continue to solve the problems of Vermont with federal funds. I think from my perspective, my approach would be to be practical, to be also transparent, and to protect the most vulnerable in terms of access to food, access to health care. From my perspective, that's how we should approach this problem.
Thank you, Ali. The next question builds on this idea of funding and how we fund our services and programs, and we'll turn to Carol first for this question. On revenue and taxation. Vermont is facing increased costs across housing, education, healthcare, and human services, and then at the same time, as we've discussed, federal funding is uncertain. Progressive lawmakers have pushed for new taxes on high earners and large asset transfers, while the governor and others have resisted new taxes and fees. Where do you come down on the debate around new taxes, and how do you think the state should raise the revenue it needs going forward?
Thank you for the question. This relates to where I would prioritize state spending. And to the extent we have insufficient funding, I would consider a health care surcharge. And for a limited time, until Congress acts to restore health care benefits for people, and until it restores the Americans with ACA subsidies, so that individuals have health care coverage, and to protect our hospitals and healthcare systems from bankruptcy. I would look at something like a surcharge, which was something like what Governor Snelling did in 1991. He had a surcharge, and everyone participated, but those who had more contributed more. And it was for a limited time, for a limited purpose. I think Vermonters I don't like a divisive message. Tax this group only, tax that group only. We're all in this together, and we can all do, even if it's a tiny bit, up to a much greater amount to protect our citizens from these tremendous federal cuts.
Thank you, Carol. We'll turn to Ali next. Where do you think, or where do you come down on the debate around new taxes, and how do you think the state should raise the revenue it needs going forward?
Thank you. And I think before we create new taxes, we want to make sure that also people who are being taxed, where their tax dollars are doing, and are we using it efficiently? From my perspective, we will need to always come back to the way in which we operate the government, right, before we create new taxes. There is this sentiment that we need to tax the rich. I completely agree that those who are extremely rich, and it's around 3,000 something for the state of Vermont, they need to also contribute a little bit more. But we also need to be very practical for what program or for what purpose in order for us to have a conversation with them. What we don't also want is for those rich people to move out of the state, because we have seen it in New York, they're moving elsewhere. Let's be a comprehensive one, understand what do we need to tax them, by how much, and have the conversation with them in order to make it happen. My priority is to keep Vermont affordable while ensuring we can continue to invest in education, public safety, healthcare, infrastructure that Vermonters rely on to survive.
Thank you, Ali. And Amy, your response. Where do you come down on the debate around new taxes, and how do you think the state should raise the revenue it needs going forward?
Right. Well, the sentiment of the day, perhaps the sentiment of all of history, has been tax the rich. And the discrepancy between the very wealthy and people who are struggling financially is large. You know, we're at a point where some people have multiple homes and giant vacations and lots of toys, and we're fighting over whether or not children should get a free school lunch. Like, that's absurd and disturbing to me. There are Vermonters who have wealth and have means who have stepped forward and said, we want to contribute more, we want to pay more. I think one of my questions is, are we assessing that wealth accurately? I had a conversation when I was going door to door with a woman who talked about the issue of having two homes, because one of the ideas is we'll do a higher tax rate on second homeowners. And perhaps if someone has 2 or 3 or 4 multi-million-dollar houses, that's one thing. She was a person who has her home, a modest home. One of her parents died, and she inherited a modest home, and now her son is living in that home because he can't afford to live somewhere else. So comparing that wealth to someone else's wealth, I just think we need to do a better job of assessing that piece.
Thanks so much for your responses to that question. And I have to say, everyone's doing so well staying within the 90-second parameters. These are tough questions, so thank you for that. We're going to turn to a question on the citizen legislature. And this is a fun fact for your next trivia night. Vermont's part-time citizen legislature passed nearly 250 bills this biennium, covering seemingly everything from education reform and housing to data privacy, animal welfare, agricultural security, neurological rights, gender equity and corrections, immigration accountability, and environmental protection. We'll start with Ali for this question. What are 2 issues where you feel most prepared to lead?
Yep. I think one of them is because of my background in the education system, worked for Burlington School District for 13 years, and now working for an organization called Building Bright Futures, and we are charged in implementing Act 76. We are also holding the data, how the well-being of children and families, and every single year we provide what we call policy recommendation. So we work across every single day with the legislature and the administration. I think education would be something that I would want to tackle and also lead, because not from the perspective of just funding education, but also from the perspective of providing great academic success for Vermont children. I think that's one. The second one is specific to workforce. All these problems that we're hearing, healthcare, taxing and all of it, because we do not have enough workforce. From my perspective, and also the work that I've been doing with the Vermont National Guard through an act called S30, implementing great relationship with Senegal, with Austria, and also with Macedonia in order to build our workforce development. Those 2, we don't have enough time, but I would want to, champion them as the next legislator.
Thank you, Ali. I'll turn to Amy Belowski-Branch. What are the 2 issues where you feel most prepared to lead?
Thanks. After Trump won the presidency, I joined two groups of friends and neighbors who've intentionally met once a month to talk about resistance and community building in the face of this administration's systematic attack on civil rights. I'm on the Migrant Justice Rapid Response System. On March 11th, I spent 5 hours bearing witness to the Dorset Street kidnapping of asylum seekers by ICE. I'm extremely passionate about supporting and protecting the rights of our migrant and immigrant neighbors. And I'm really appreciative of some of legislative efforts in that behalf, the right to sue federal agents for constitutional rights violations, unmasking of ICE, sensitive location protocols. And then, so the second issue is about using plain language. I feel like often the legislative government process is confusing to most people, and I'd like to figure out a way to share information back to constituents in a succinct, clear way so that people understand how the governmental process works. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. And we'll wrap this question with Carol. What are the two issues where you feel most prepared to lead?
One is homelessness. H 938 was passed, we passed it, and the governor signed it, and it's a start. It's a good start, say the advocates for the homeless. It moves away from the motel voucher program, and it moves toward creating a sustainable homelessness response system with supports and moving people to permanent housing. We need that desperately in our city and in other cities across Vermont. And second, and I've mentioned it before, but the school finance. Right now, we are looking at a new foundation formula, and there are several pieces in there that I have issues with. One is how property tax relief would work for Burlington residents. Our housing is higher in value than in other parts of the state. Our incomes are higher than in other parts of the state, and yet we would get on the chart that as it now exists in the foundation formula, we would not be able to get very much property tax relief. So that is something that I want to work on, and that's a big thing to do. Well, it's a lot.
We're going to build on that a little bit with our next question on education spending. We'll start with Amy for this question. Vermont's student enrollment has been declining while per pupil spending continues to rise. What does a sustainable, long-term solution for education funding actually look like?
It's a tough question, right?
90 seconds.
Okay, here I go. So from the outside looking in, at this last session, it seems like there was a lot of really good work done about the education bill. Although it seemed like there were 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I'm sure it was really tough for the folks that were there doing that piece. But overall, it appears as if it's moving in the right direction. I'm really appreciative of the concept of maintaining local control. People in their local communities are capable of making tough and sound decisions. Top-down heavy decisions rarely work, or they work in the short term, they don't work in the long term, from my experience. I'm really appreciative of the ideas of trying to find ways to share and combine costs, so IT costs, HR costs, human resources, transportation costs, coming up with creative ways to share some of those things. And we need more people to move to Vermont. We need more people to move to Burlington, which is interconnected with everything else related to housing and healthcare and employment. So those are some of my thoughts.
Thank you, Amy. We'll go back to you, Carol, to build on this question. What does a sustainable long-term solution for education funding actually look like?
Well, there are 3 funds, big funds in our government. One is the Transportation Fund, and that is the gas tax, the purchase and use tax, and some federal matching money, quite a bit of federal matching money. Then there's the Ed Fund, which is property taxes, lotteries, sales and use, some of the purchase and use tax. And there's the general fund, which is income taxes, corporate taxes, and partnership taxes, for example. The general fund, I believe, needs to cover special ed and mental health costs, as it does in other states. It's the right thing to do for property taxpayers who otherwise have to bear the burden of the increased costs. And it will force the legislature and the governor to solve 2 of the biggest cost drivers for education costs: special education and mental health care. Second of all, I would we have to figure out how to make our health care cost less than it does. And although we've made progress on that, it is still the most expensive health care in the country, and our country has the most expensive health care in the world. That is increasing our school budgets and all kinds of other, businesses' budgets and state budgets and so forth, so much. So we have to get a grip on that.
Thank you, Carol. And we'll wrap this question with Ali Jeng. What does a sustainable long-term solution for education funding actually look like?
I'm so glad you can pronounce my last name so well. Thank you. That's great. I think sustainable long-term funding for education funding in the state of Vermont comes down to two things. One is how do we protect, how do we ensure we are providing great education system for children and also for families. And two, to also be able to afford what we're trying to achieve, right? We should not, from my perspective, bring funding models that are not transparent, funding models also that are not equitable across the communities, and also to keep on increasing taxes. We need to start to think outside of the box. I know that the legislators are trying, and reason why right now we need new people, new perspective, and new ideas in order to solve the problems that everyone is crying about.
We are going to turn to a question on legislative oversight and government accountability. We'll start with Carol for this question. So this session, the legislature took up H67, a government accountability pilot that would charge the Joint Fiscal Committee with evaluating whether state programs are actually delivering on their goals. Do you think the legislature has been doing enough to hold the executive branch accountable? And what would meaningful oversight look like to you in the next session?
Thank you. So first, we have a state auditor whose office oversees how our money is spent and how programs are working. And second, I serve on the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules, which is a joint Senate and House committee. After a law passes, some laws require rules to implement them. And the governor runs the executive branch. So it's his agencies who write the proposed rules, and they go out for public comment, and then the rule is solidified, and then it comes to us on the LCAR committee. And we look to see if the correct process was used to write the rule and whether the rule meets legislative intent. And if so, we approve that rule. And that is one example of holding government accountable.
Thank you, Carol. Ali Jeng, do you think the legislature has been doing enough to hold the executive branch accountable, and what would meaningful oversight look like to you in the next session?
Yep. From my perspective, the legislature has an important responsibility to provide independent oversight to also the administration. That oversight should be consistent, transparent, focused on improving outcome for Vermonters, right? But I think I want to see more collaboration with the governor and also the office, because most of the time we are crying about issues that we all care about, but let's take the time and have the long perspective view in order to get it done, and also get it done in a way it's great. Another element also is we're passing so many bills. We talked about it, 200 bills this past biennial, but their implementation. What is the role of the legislator to support the implementation in their communities, and also how do we collaborate with local government, how do we collaborate with local institutions such as the community health centers, Howard Center, etc., in order to implement the bill that we're passing. From my perspective, that would be a focus of me as the next legislator. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll wrap with Amy on this question about legislative oversight and government accountability. What would meaningful oversight look like to you in the next session?
So building on what Carol and Ali have said, as I understand the goal of this pilot, it's to enhance transparency, evaluate state governmental practices, and provide nonpartisan data to the legislature. Of all of those things, that's the one I feel most excited about, like nonpartisan data. We need data. Data speaks the truth, and so we need to find ways to get that information as much as possible. Accountability is really important for all parts of our governmental system. There was an article in 7 Days about a month ago. It was called "Vermont Lawmakers Push Big Ideas but Struggle to Fund Them." And I think Vermonters are often very aspirational, and I think that's amazing, and I strive to be aspirational myself, and we have to balance that with reality and practicality. So I feel hopeful about this pilot and looking at this accountability. So, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to turn to a question about community media, something dear to my heart. Last year, the legislature allocated $1.89 million to support community media and radio across the state for emergency communications. The list goes on. Hybrid access to local government, support for elections, media education, and more. Ali Jeng, do you support finding a way to sustain community media through public funding?
Of course I do. I definitely do, because if I give the example of just the CCTV town meeting television, the services that they provide, especially to the new American communities, we cannot measure the impact that it has. I have seen so many young people now being able to tell their stories using the equipment, using the studio here to tell their stories. I myself have what we call here a show called Alice Corner, and ladies and gentlemen, I want you to go watch it to talk about every issue affecting you every single day. And it did not start yesterday. It starts since 2018. So yes, of course, we want to see more funding that is sustainable, not only for the television, but also for the radio. And lastly, when I was a Burlington City Councilor, I represented the city in the board here to understand the issues affecting you, and also to be able to channel some of your needs to the local government. CCTV, thank you, and of course, I will do that.
Thank you, Ali. Amy, your thoughts. Do you support finding a way to sustain community media through public funding?
Yes, yes, yes. Was that 90 seconds?
Yes.
No, okay. So 2 weeks ago, I saw the documentary Steal the Story, Please, which was a documentary featuring Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! And there was a lot of stuff in that documentary. If you get a chance to see it, please watch it. But one of the primary themes was the importance of independent journalism. And they highlighted the issue that most media today is owned by a handful of people, and so it's hard to trust our media. So I feel like community media, local media is something that we can trust. It's really important to inform people about local issues and emergencies, and it's one more level of accountability, right? Everyone can watch the three of us talking tonight and hear, if we're not going to get to every door, right? We'd like to, but we might not get to every door, but people can hear all of us talk about these issues and then make an informed decision about who they want to vote for. So local community media is vital.
Thank you, Amy. And we'll wrap this question with Carol Odie. Do you support finding a way to sustain community media through public funding?
I do, and I have worked toward that in the past. The problem is that cable TV, where we used to all get our TV, had a fee associated with it, and some of that fee paid for CCTV. And fewer people use cable. We're using streaming services like Netflix and Hulu and so forth, and there are no fees associated with that. So we've lost that revenue stream. So we have to implement a reliable funding stream for all the reasons that it's just very directly reaches people, and you see exactly what's happening. It's very transparent in your own local community.
Thank you. We are going to turn to a question on health care costs, and we'll start with Amy Belowski-Branch with this one. Vermont has some of the highest health care costs in the country. At the same time, Vermont's hospitals are losing money as patient visits decline, putting rural and community medical centers under real financial strain. How do you think about the tension between bringing costs down and keeping hospitals financially viable, and what else needs to be part of the solution?
Great, thank you. So I think that the legislature has been moving in the right direction on this. 3 recent acts, Act 55, capping the profit that hospitals receive on prescription drugs. Act 49, increasing the Green Mountain Care Board's ability to regulate health networks, and Act 68, creating a healthcare delivery strategic plan. So I think those are really important steps. Last week, I went to a presentation by Vermont Healthcare 911. So they're a coalition comprised of business owners, labor leaders, healthcare providers, civic and political leaders of all parties, representing over 200,000 Vermonters. And they had a panel of really inspiring experts from the university hospitals in Cleveland who have been able to really dramatically shift their hospital system. So they've reduced cost and patient wait times, improved quality outcomes, empowered their staff, and they've really transformed their healthcare system. So I left that feeling really hopeful because many of the medical leaders in Vermont were at that conference. I'm still cautious. The recent layoffs at the hospital are challenging, but that made me feel hopeful today.
Thank you, Amy. Carol Odie, how do you think about the tension between bringing costs down and keeping hospitals financially viable, and what else needs to be part of the solution?
Well, I'd like to take a good look at the actions of the Green Mountain Care Board and ask, are they acting within their legislative mandate? I'd also, we passed reference-based pricing this past session, although the governor did veto it. The hope was to lower what patients pay, which would eventually lower the burden on taxpayers in the state, because what we all pay for government and school health care premiums, school district employee health care premiums, impacts our tax burden.
Thank you very much. Ali, your response to the question on hospital funding, bringing costs down, and what else needs to be part of the solution?
Okay. I think based on my experience working as a board of director, the community health center, we serve 30,000 patients. We also manage 8 sites across Chittenden and also Grand Isle County. From my perspective, providing care and also that is accessible and also affordable is not something that we should always rely on an act in order to make it happen. I think most of the time what we don't do is the way in which we are applying to federal grants. Like right now, the state of Vermont has received rural health implementation grant, which is nearly 200 million every year for 5 years, right? But now Burlington is not considered as rural. So the administration, when they were applying, why couldn't they apply into different grant in order to access that resources? We, the 30,000 people that I tell you we are serving, some of them are homeless, and we should not turn anybody away. But it would be important for us to, again, like I said, we make sure that the legislators who are representing their communities work in collaboration with the institutions in those communities that they represent, to be able to hear the problem, to be able to elevate it at the state level, and to be able to solve the problem. I completely agree with Act 55, 49, 68. All of those are great steps to the right direction, but the collaboration is still what's missing, and that's what I would want to go and bring it to Burlington and at the state level.
Thank you, Ali. Before we close tonight's program, we are going to go through a lightning round of questions. So if you please, to these following questions, respond with a yes or no answer. If you need less than 10 seconds to respond to the question. We'll start with Carol. Should any private schools be funded with public dollars?
No, same dollars, same rules.
Ali, should any private schools be funded with public dollars?
Yes, if the private schools also are managed by the rules and regulation of the public schools.
Amy, should any private schools be funded with public dollars?
Only if they are the town's only schools, such as St. Johnsbury Academy and Linden Institute.
Next question, starting with Ali. Do you support a wealth tax in Vermont to make up for federal tax cuts?
Yes.
Amy, do you support a wealth tax in Vermont to make up for federal tax cuts?
In general, yes, but we have to be able to more fairly and accurately assess what we mean by wealth.
Carol Odie, do you support a wealth tax in Vermont to make up for federal tax cuts?
My answer is that I support a surcharge on income tax.
We'll start with Amy for this next question. Do you support building a new women's correctional facility?
Too big of a question for a simple yes or no. We need to relook at our criminal justice system as a whole in Vermont.
Carol Odie, do you support building a new women's correctional facility?
Yes, I've seen a women's reentry facility in Maine. I personally went to see it. It's supportive, and it would be a wonderful thing to do for the women in the correctional facility now.
Ali, do you support building a new women's correctional facility?
If we need one, yes.
We'll start with Carol for this next one. Do you support using state dollars to build a new UVM athletic complex?
We used unclaimed property dollars to do that this past session, and it's a whole health situation there with mental health care, wellness, and physical health, as well as sports.
Ali, do you support using state dollars to build a new UVM athletic complex?
No.
And Amy, do you support using state dollars to build a new UVM athletic complex?
No.
All right, last lightning round question, starting with Ali. Should Vermont move to a full-time legislature?
Yes.
Amy, should Vermont move to a full-time legislature?
Yes.
Carol, should Vermont move to a full-time legislature?
Absolutely not. I think it's great that we have a citizens legislature. We're close to the people. We know what it is to live in the real world. We come into the legislature, we work, and we go out. And I think that works.
All right, we're going to move on to closing statements, 30-second closing statements for everyone. And let's see if I've kept track of everyone. I think we started with Ali for that last question, so we'll start with Amy Belowski-Branch for your 30-second closing statement.
Great. I wish I could be the one to say, this is how we fix the healthcare crisis, or this is how we simultaneously lower our taxes while increasing all of the things that we are lacking. If there were simple solutions to the issues we're talking about, we would have figured it out by now. Here's what I do know. Since the beginning of time, when people are in crisis or struggling, they either isolate and attack others out of fear, or they do this. They join together, they lay down their weapons, and they set aside their differences. They assess their resources and assign tasks accordingly. They come up with a strategy, they try it out, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't, they begin again. If I'm elected to the Vermont House, I will dedicate myself to tapping into the brilliance of Vermonters to solve the challenges that we face here in Vermont and to resist the oppression of our current federal administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy Belowski-Branch. Carol Odie, your 30-second closing statement.
Thank you. I've loved serving these past 10 years and making progress on the priorities important to the people in our district. With your support, I'd like to go back to the State House and focus on building a strong economy, providing more property tax relief, and cleaning up our environment and keeping our constitutional rights and our democracy strong.
Thank you.
And thank you to CCTV for this
Thank you,
forum.
Carol Odie. And Ali Jeng, your 30-second closing statement.
Yep. On Tuesday, August 11, I'm asking for your vote to vote for Ali Jeng and send me to Montpelier. I have demonstrated commitment to my community, and I will want to continue to bring my experience in government, in healthcare, in education, and also to bring new ideas and new perspective. I think that's exactly what we need. And also to strengthen the collaboration between the legislature and also the major institutions that we have in the city of Burlington. On Tuesday, August 11, please vote for Ali Jeng, and also on November 3rd, please vote for Ali Jeng. Thank you, CCTV, and thank you, Carol and Amy, for being here with me today.
Thank you to the candidates for being here, and thank you for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's ongoing coverage of local candidates, budgets, and ballot items. You can find this and many more forums at cctv.org/primary or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel. And don't forget to cast your ballot on Town Meeting Day, primary day, on or before August 11th, and then tune into Town Meeting TV's primary results recap show. That following day in the afternoon on August 12th, contact your local clerk to find out how to obtain a ballot and to register to vote. And remember, in Vermont, you can register to vote on Election Day. Thank you for watching and sharing Town Meeting TV. Good night.